Hello. So what I'd like to do today is to cover the topic of vinegar as an aquarium equipment and tank cleaner, and seeing whether or not it's still a viable option for people who want to go ahead and find a safe way of cleaning their tanks and their equipment. So what's happened is that in recent years, more and more people have been switching away from vinegar to citric acid as the go-to cleaner for aquarium equipment and like cleaning out used tanks and getting them prepped for setup. So there's been a lot of debate on this subject. Some people, quite honestly, in the citric acid camp are so adamant that a vinegar is absolutely going to destroy your equipment and you're going to be replacing it every year to 2 years if you keep using it. Whereas other people who have been in the hobby for a longer period of time are just like, I've used vinegar for decades and never had a single problem. I've had stuff that's lasted for years using the stuff periodically, so I don't see why I need to switch. So, and to be fair, the folks who are advocating the switch from vinegar to citric acid, there is some science behind the fact that vinegar is more corrosive to, plastics, ceramics, that sort of thing. It can be more corrosive in that respect than, say, citric acid, which generally doesn't really, do much in that respect, not unless you're, using a really high concentration of it. So, anyway, so there is some science behind that, and one guy actually went through and posted some science that he'd done on it, showing the difference between the two and the molecules and how they interact and all that fun stuff. But unfortunately, the guy who did this, he shot himself in both feet with his argument when it was revealed that what led up to this and his opinion about why vinegar shouldn't be used was there were 4 things that really did him in for his argument, and the first one was the powerhead wave maker in question that was destroyed by vinegar after about a year and a half. He was putting it in straight vinegar. I don't know anybody, myself included, who has ever done a straight dip into vinegar for any aquarium equipment. I've never done that with cleaning out an aquarium itself. I've never done it with my pumps, power heads, anything that I've ever put in my tanks. It's just way too strong. B, he was letting it sit all night. Once again, an hour or 2 at most is all you really need with vinegar. Third was that he was not rinsing or flushing it out, and effectively, when he was done, he was just letting the vinegar dry in there and then putting it back in his tank. Now, and keep in mind, he's running a saltwater tank. So, dried vinegar, which is acidic in nature, and then throwing it into a bunch of salt water does not really strike me as being a really good common sense thing to do. The last one was that he was also doing this on a monthly basis. So the combination of the intensity of the vinegar he was using, the duration with how long he was letting it sit there, the fact that he was letting it dry out with vinegar, and the fact that he was doing this on a monthly basis, the frequency there. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm amazed that his equipment lasted as long as it did, given the fact that he was basically, committing a 4-part screw-up there with how he was applying the use of vinegar. Because, for example, I don't care if you're using vinegar or if you're using citric acid. If I use citric acid and I dump a whole bag or container in a gallon of water and then sit there and start crying about maybe why my equipment is struggling or not doing so well after a couple of years, I recognize, that, yeah, it's not going to be as corrosive on it or whatever, but it's still a strong mixture of acid is a strong mixture of acid. So I I'm just going to say that, either way, it's just, you have to use some common sense with how you apply the use. You have to sit there and recognize that you don't want to ever put something in straight vinegar or a super high concentration of citric acid. You got to do the right measurements. I think the highest concentration of vinegar that I have ever used in my aquarium equipment is about 1/8 of a gallon of vinegar to 1 gallon of water. So, and that's a pretty strong mixture. Now, as far as, advantages, disadvantages, there is an advantage to using vinegar, and it's been pointed out by a number of people who've been using it for years, which is that vinegar, even though, yes, it has the potential to be corrosive, it is more effective at getting rid of really just clogged stuff. Okay, if you get it in a stronger mixture or whatever, like in my case, what I use it for most often is for flushing out my my skimmer pump, the pump on my protein skimmer, and you get some of the salt built up in there. You get like coralline algae or anything that gets built up around or in there or whatever. Citric acid, it's a good, effective cleaner. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying that it's not quite as potent as far as if you really need something strong to clear it out. So vinegar does have a bit of an edge in that department. But, realistically, what I'm going to say is both of them are good options, whether you use citric acid or whether you use vinegar. But my point in making this video is that, like anything else, it's not an either-or situation. The truth is that it's, you can use either one of them as long as you recognize the shortcomings of both and applying them with good information and experience by people who have used it. So, whether you use citric acid or whether you use vinegar, I would say, that's great. Whichever one works for you, use it. But I am going to say that the people who sit there and adamantly claim that, that vinegar is this horrible, nasty thing that's going to destroy your equipment within a year or two, they're full of it. Unless they are, as I said, being like that guy who's sitting there and just dumping it in straight vinegar and letting it sit for, like 8 to 10 hours and all that stuff, and just not applying good sense with the application and using it the way it should be used, which is as a diluted mix with a higher concentration of water than with vinegar. And that's all I've got, and thanks for watching.